Hello, this is Caven. I am going to now do some poetry because I like poetry. I want to get really good at reading it. It's about investment, though. I understand that. I'm going to read from the Writer's Almanac for Friday, February the 24th, 2012, Garrison Keillor's wonderful Writer's Almanac. Claudio Monteverdi's opera, L'Orfeo, received its premiere on this date in 1607 in Mantua, Italy. It told the story of Orpheus who descended into Hades to retrieve his dead wife, Eurydice. Eurydice. Around this time, musical theater consisted largely of orchestral interludes between the acts of straight plays, but some composers were experimenting with including music into the action of the play itself. L'Orfeo was the first fully developed work of the new genre in which all the actors sang. People liked it. Today is the birthday of Wilhelm Grimm, born in Hanau, Germany, in 1786, who, with his brother Jacob, collected and compiled oral folk tales from nearby villages. The brothers Grimm published their first volume in 1812, many of them dark and violent. While their original intent was to preserve their culture's oral folk tales, they soon realized children were reading their book and began adapting the tales to take out some of the more disturbing imagery. The old stories, which had previously performed the psychological function of preparing young people to deal with the harsh realities of medieval life, ended up as fairly sanitized cautionary tales about morality. They also provided a lucrative franchise for Walt Disney. We can thank Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm for the tales of Snow White, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, and Sleeping Beauty, among others. Wow. Today is the birthday of Jane Hirschfield, born in New York City in 1953. She went to Princeton, where she was in the first graduating class to include women in 1973. She published her first poem not long after, then went off to Northern California to study Buddhism for the next 8 years, during which time she didn't write at all. She said, quote, "I don't think poetry is based just on poetry. It is based on a thoroughly lived life. So I couldn't just decide I was going to write no matter what. First had to find out what it meant to live," unquote. Her most recent book of poetry is Come Thief, written in 2011. Today is the birthday of Steve Jobs, born in San Francisco in 1955 to two University of Wisconsin graduate students who placed him for adoption. Clara and Paul Jobs, an accountant and a machinist, adopted him when he was still a baby. Growing up, Jobs and his father would tinker with electronics in his garage. He dropped out of college after a semester, went to India in search of spiritual enlightenment, returned a devout Buddhist, experimented with LSD, and then got a job with a video game maker where he was in charge of designing circuit boards for one of the company's games. In 1976, at the age of 21, he co-founded Apple Computers, and less than a decade later, Apple unveiled the Macintosh computer. It was the first small computer to catch on with the public that used a graphical user interface, or GUI, where people could simply click on icons instead of typing in precise text commands. Oh, there's much more about his life, and you know what he's done. Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2003. He opted for a variety of alternative treatments, but eventually in 2004, he underwent surgery to remove the tumor. His health began to decline in 2009, and the disease claimed him last October 2011. He was 56. Jobs once said, quote, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You're already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart," unquote. That's powerful. That's really powerful. Here's a poem from Jennifer Maier called Live Oaks, New Orleans. Jennifer Maier is a professor of English at the University of Washington. Is this true? Am I saying this wrong? No, she is not. She's not. She's at the University of Washington. She received her BA/BS. She got both at the University of Washington in 1985. She got a PhD from Tulane University. And her specialties is modern American and British poetry and creative writing. A native of Washington State and the daughter of a Navy test pilot, Jennifer Maier divided her childhood between Washington, California, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. She attended Catholic parochial schools through high school and went on to graduate magna cum laude from the University of Washington with degrees in English and physiological psychology. An interesting afternoon in her anatomy class, dissection lab, ask her about this, it says, involving a human brain, a scalpel, and a poem by Robert Frost helped Dr. Maier decide to forego medical school in favor of postgraduate study in American literature. She moved to New Orleans, a favorite city since childhood, to study at Tulane University, completing her dissertation on the artistic alliance between photography and poetry in the late 20th century. She finished that in 1988. It was during her time in New Orleans that Dr. Maier also began to publish her own poems inspired by the eccentric melange of art, history, and culture unique to that city. She needs to hook up with Joan. So, back to her poem, which is Live Oaks, New Orleans. I dedicate this to Joan. They square off along Napoleon Avenue, opposing armies of dark women leaning out so far their branches meet at the top, like hands grabbing fistfuls of hair. And some of them are old, with the thick, scarred trunks of Storyville madams, and roots so strong they heave up the sidewalk like so many broken saltines. You know what? I'm going to have to start this one again. Live Oaks, New Orleans, because I keep screwing it up, by Jennifer Maier. They square off along Napoleon Avenue, opposing armies of dark women, leaning out so far their branches meet at the top, like hands grabbing fistfuls of tangled hair. Some of them are old, with the thick, scarred trunks of Storyville madams, and roots so strong their suck heaves up the sidewalk like so many broken saltines. And some are young, with straight-backed bodies of girls who dream of horses and the brown arms of the neighbor boys. But underground their red roots grow together, fuse in a living circuitry spun deep and stronger than the whims of emperors, as if they've known all along that Earth's the right place for love, as though, planted in the battle lines, they incline toward the circle and hold it open, vaulted and welcoming. Live Oaks, New Orleans, by Jennifer Maier. For the Writer's Almanac, it was from her book Dark Alphabet, a collection of poems, published by Southern Illinois University Press, 2006, reprinted with permission for the Writer's Almanac. Production credits for the Writer's Almanac include the host being Garrison Keillor, writers Betsy Allister, Heather McPherson, Holly Vanderhaar, technical director is Thomas Schweisker, the engineer is Noah Smith, the coordinator is Nick Vetter, and permissions were obtained by Miss Kathy Roach. Web producer Ben Miller, whole new person on there. And as Garrison Keillor says at the end of every Writer's Almanac, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.